Welcome everybody. Today we start a new series. The great weapon against the French defense. So when you open your game with e4 and your opponent responds with e6, after d4 and d5 we are getting into the deep water of the French defense. Quite famous and quite popular line. So in that case, of course, white could play knight c3 with a classical variation, or knight d2, which we call Tarrasch variation, or one of the greatest weapons of world champion Anatoly Karpov. Indeed, the great popularity, like 80-90 years ago, e4, e5, advanced variation of the French defense. So today this line is not so popular because after e4, e5, white is fixing the center and allowing black to counterattack the pawns after c7, c5 or f6, f7, f6. So trying to destroy white's center and just to activate later on the biggest problem in the black in the French defense, the light squares bishop. Indeed, after e5, c5 and c3 still we're having a lot of interesting opportunities for white, how to keep the pressure, how to keep the initiative. And one of that opening lines which I would like to present you today called the Milner-Barry gambit in the French defense advanced variation. So Milner-Barry was the English chess player who discovered this quite interesting idea of sacrificing 2 pawns. But first of all, I would like just to give you some historical information about it. e4, e5 becomes quite I would say popular choice from the white side in French defense after the greatest thinker of the last century, Aaron Nimzowitsch. So he intended inventing this idea of e4, e5 and then trying to keep the center, and in some situation he said that it's not so important even for white to keep this e4, e5 and d4 pawns, but in his famous game against Salvin he showed that even for white is enough to control this e5 and d4 square with the pieces, and this also could bring white just serious dividends. And it was quite revolution, I would say, in the classical way of presenting the information. Because after queen b6, knight f3, and knight c6, in one of his famous game against Salve, as I said before, Nimzowitsch played already here bishop d3. And after bishop d7, just decided to capture the pawn on c5, and after bishop takes c5, short castling, just got better position. So this is quite famous line, which also you can study from chess books. So I just like to show you that after f6, that's exactly what happened in the game. b4, bishop e7, bishop f4. Nimzowitsch took the full control over the e5 and then later on over the d4 square, and just brilliantly realized his positional advantage when black's bishop on d7 was still very passive for the whole game. So what exactly happened here? What is the biggest difference from what we are going to study? That because in this position many of Nimzovich's opponents already realize that bishop d7 is not precise continuation in such a line, and much better start with c takes d4. So first of all we capturing on d4, and only after c takes d4 white is not having anymore this opportunity to capture on c5, and black is playing bishop d7 intending the pawn on d4. For our reader, for my friends, I just could explain you that knight takes d4 never possible, and I guess you easy could realize it, because knight takes d4 will be met by knight takes d4, queen takes d4, and because queen on d4 is hanging, white just simply playing bishop b5 check, and the game is over. With the next move, we are just going to capture the queen on d4. So, black first of all, before trying to capture this pawn on d4, must play bishop d7. So now black is intending already to capture on d4. And I saw many games of Nimzowitsch here. He almost never, or maybe never, allowed black to capture. So in some games he played bishop c2, and in some games he played bishop e2, and this is quite new idea, was just like 60 years ago, that English chess player Stuart Milner Barry decided just to sacrifice the pawn. Short castling. So allowing black to capture on d4. Knight takes d4, queen takes d4. And now white is even not going to protect the second pawn. So black is under pressure after knight c3. So white is willing to sacrifice the second pawn in a row. So this is quite interesting idea. After queen takes e5 and rook e1, we are reaching the classical position of the Milner-Barry gambit line in the French defense. Black queen is attacked. White has all the pieces in the game almost. So look, the bishop is quite active. The knight is ready to go to b5. The queen is under attack. So white has two open files in the center. So quite significant compensation. Indeed, of course, we have to prove that we have enough for 2 pawns. Because in case black finishing his development after knight f6, bishop e7 and short cast and everything fine. It's no big problem for black. So white has to play quite aggressive in case to take the advantage of his permanent, I would say, a development advantage. So after rook e1, black has few opportunities. Of course, black has to move the queen. Where to move it? First of all, we cannot move on the 5th rank at all, because all the squares or the 5th rank controlled by white's pieces. So also not g5, also not f5. It's quite bad, of course, to play queen f6, because this all just immediately allows white to capture on d5 and get in almost decisive position. I mean a decisive advantage, since after queen d8 and bishop f4 it's just very tough position for black. So white is intending knight c7, bishop c7, whatever, and still black's king in the center and no pawn, and I mean just for 1 pawn white is having just huge attack. So we have to look for other opportunities. Second problem here, that black cannot also go to c7. One of the game happened with the queen c7 line. I'd just like to show you what exactly happened here. Knight takes d5. Queen d6. So now we have to protect this knight on d5. Simply bishop c4, intending bishop f4, and incoming knight c7 check is coming. So any move like knight f6 or knight e7, bishop f4, black has to resign. Next move is coming knight c7. So fast, it could be over. So usually black has 2 main lines here. To go with the queen to b6 or to d6, sorry, or to b8. I would like just to show you a few lines, and you just could realize why the position of black is so dangerous in this gambit line. So after queen b8, Knight takes d5. White is intending to bring the bishop to f4. Let's say knight e7 is a huge mistake. After bishop f4, black is lost. Knight c7 is coming. What else? Of course, move like bishop c6 also is not great help for black. Why? Once again, I believe white could play bishop f4. And after bishop d6, also possible to capture on d6. The second interesting option, I believe, could be here bishop b5. Also with idea bishop takes b5, bishop f4 maybe. And the bishop f4 and bishop d6, white could keep the initiative after just very strong move queen g4, intending queen take g7. And if black plays g6, that rook takes e6, just to sacrifice and to get into the maiden attack. Takes, queen takes e6. All white pieces in the game, so it's not a big surprise that the game is over, etc. So threats queen takes e7, threats knight f6, threats knight c7. So only one way here to survive is just to move out the bishop, to play bishop d6. So black is trying to sacrifice the pawn back, but to get all the pieces out and to castle very soon. Okay, one more interesting lines here. So also position after knight takes d5 and bishop d6 we will analyze later on. So what happened in case of queen d6? Also white already could move here the knight to b5, but I would like just to show you some other ideas. Queen f3. And after knight e7, bishop f4. Queen c5. And after rook c1, it's extremely difficult for black to stop white from playing knight b5. And then knight c7. So black is in very difficult position. Okay, one more. So, main line here, knight b5. Now, if black is capturing bishop takes b5, after bishop takes b5 check, and king d8, queen a4, the position is very unpleasant. So black's king already forever in the center, so white is intending just to continue the developing. After bishop f4, then rook is capturing the open file. Clear that black is in big trouble here. So sometimes black is trying to avoid this problem by playing queen b6, but still bishop e3 with white is continued developing, all the pieces tempting. Bishop c5 is losing exchange in the game after takes and rook c1. By the way, this is happening in many games. So queen somewhere and knight c7. Game is over. a8. Rook is gone. And if after bishop e3 we play something like queen a5, this is also not so simple to play for black. White could continue something like queen b3 with idea rook c1. Sometimes even I can intend queen takes d5. Pay attention to this situation when black's king is on e8 and rook on e1. Some kind of Rentgen. Okay, so let's see one more game. Bishop takes b5, bishop takes b5, and king d8. Bishop e3. So instead of queen a4, also bishop e3 playable. a6, and only after queen a4, rook c8 and rook c1. Rook takes c1, rook takes c1. So now it's a good question how black would continue the developing. How to finish the development. The king in the center. Suddenly white is intending queen a5 check, let's say. In case of knight f6, queen a5 check, black is completely hopeless. The same problem is after knight e7, queen a5 check. So the only answer is just to recapture back the piece. In that case, check. Check. Checkmate. You can ask me, so what in case of king e7, just bishop c5 wins queen immediately in the game, of course. So after bishop takes b5 and bishop takes b5 check, white has just plenty of opportunities how to continue the attack. One game I saw white played a bit funny move, queen h5, g6, queen f3, f6, bishop f4. Now after e5 we could continue rook a to d1 with a very strong position. Queen b6, and white finished the game with a nice combination. Can you find it? Not so difficult. White to move and win, immediate win. So how cramped, look how cramped position of black's king on d8 in the center. So just white is ruins the structure after queen takes d5 and the game is over. E takes d5, rook e8, checkmate. So the great development advantage helps white just to reach the targets and to find the quickest way to destroy black's position. Okay. Next one. Let's finally look a bit on queen b8 line. So as I said before, knight takes d5 will be met by bishop d6. Sometimes white is playing in this position, queen f3, intending to play bishop f4 next. So when this queen f3 move is really serious threat is in that line. The queen d6, knight b5. So black is not capturing, not playing queen b6, but playing queen b8. In that case, queen f3 is quite strong alternative. Because now how to stop bishop f4 move? Once again, bishop takes b5, bishop takes b5. Clearly that white is getting almost winning situation. So black could try preventing white from playing bishop f4 by f6. So what happens then? Possible to play queen takes d5. Also, quite interesting situation could happen after bishop f4, e5, and rook takes e6. And the next move we are intending bishop takes e5 already with a huge attack. Okay, let's continue. So rook e1, queen b8, knight takes d5, bishop d6, finally. And now white has to move the queen, or to g4 or to h5. Let's start with queen h5 move. And happen in a few in a few games. In that case, black could try playing maybe knight e7. So that's why queen g4 is much more aggressive way. So white is intending queen take g7. So some games continue here. Bishop takes h2. So where to go with the king? King h1. Still, white is intending queen take g7. Bishop e5, only answer. And white is developing a piece. Bishop f4. So now bishop takes f4. Once again, will be met by queen take g7. Black is trying to start some counterplay, counterattack after knight h6, but this is very serious blunder. Why? After queen g5, white is intending checkmate. So black has no time for bishop takes f4 even. As well, no time for taking on d5 because bishop takes e5. Wins immediately. So f6 is only answer, and simply white can play queen take g7. Once again, threatening checkmate, threatening the rook. E takes d5. No way, bishop f6, also losing after knight takes f6, and then queen takes h6. So white is having quite serious threats against black's king after queen g4. So the latest theory recommends here in black position to play king f8. Could you imagine this move? So trying to prevent white from capturing the pawn on g7. But even in such situation, white is having very interesting attacking opportunity after bishop d2. Don't forget that black cannot capture the knight on d5 because queen takes d7. Also, bishop takes h2 is not so important because white plays king h1 and still continue. Next idea just to bring the bishop maybe to b4 with a check. Black's king in the center, totally out of development. The rooks, rook a8 and rook h8. So white is having all the pieces quite actively posed towards the center file. Next move maybe rook c1 or rook d1. All the pieces in the game. So I just would like just to show you a few more standard games in the Milner-Barry gambit line. e4, e6, d4, d5, e5, c5, c3, queen b6, knight f3, knight c6, bishop d3, c takes d4, c takes d4, bishop d7, short castling, knight takes, queen takes d4, knight c3 and queen takes e5, rook e1, queen b8, knight takes d6, and here instead of playing bishop d6, black plays queen d8. Bishop immediately comes to f4, threats knight c7 check, rook c8, rook c1, rook takes c1, queen takes c1, and black already in big trouble. Where to go? How to stop knight c7 check? Let's say queen a5 also could be met by knight c7 check, or simply white could start with bishop c4, intending knight c7, bishop c7. Knight f6, simply check, and queen c5 checkmate. Bishop e7, I guess black is having a lot of troubles after simple move like maybe even queen c3 with idea queen take g7. Possible as well just to play check and bishop to e4, attacking the pawn, intending rook d1 next. So once again, let's see in this position after rook e1, queen d6, knight b5, one game continuing here, queen c6. Cannot be recommended as well because white is firmly continuing bishop f4, standard way. So rook is coming to c1, knight c7 threats, f6, rook c1. Game is over. Rook c8, knight takes a7. Game is over. King d8, trying to prevent knight c7 check. Rook c1, queen b6, bishop c7. And once again, game is over. So black has to be very careful in all the lines of the Milner-Barry gambit. Okay, let's back to the starting point of what we studied today. e4, e6, d4, d5, e5, c5, c3, queen b6, knight f3, knight c6, bishop d3, c takes, bishop d7, castling short side, knight takes d4, queen takes d4, knight c3, queen takes e5, rook e1. So we just saw a few lines, few options when black is playing not so, I would say, direct way. So in the next lesson, next session, we are going to study more precise, some more, I would say, more classical games. So what happened in case of Queen d6 and Queen b8 according to the latest theory, latest developments of this theory. So because these two, I would say, main lines in this situation, when Queen b8 is even more recommended line. So how to play against the Milner-Barry gambit line. So just to make a short sum up, as you can see, black just could get into very big catastrophe already in the opening stage of this French defense when we play just one mistake. Why all this happened? Because in the gambit situation, like we just studied already for so many lessons, one wrong move could lose the game, since black is having lack in development. So white is having all his pieces already in the game, threatening black's position. Black's king is still in the center, so you have to be very precise in your actions. So any bad moves like Queen f6, Queen c7 just cannot be played in such situation. When I just explained already that just one opening mistake would just immediately demolish black's position. So if you play the French defense with black and you would like to use the French variation in your practice, just you have to be quite good prepared against the Milner-Barry opening line. And if of course you would like to include this opening line into your opening repertoire, I mean as white, so definitely you have to know all the theories and the typical combination, typical situation which could happen, which we just studied a bit. Also, next lesson, I not only just would like to bring you some standards, some serious games from already much better players, but also will give you some view about how these opening ideas of the Milner-Barry gambit, even we can see in the games on the very top level. Vishy Anand used these ideas against in his game against Alexei Shirov and all other lines. So just to give you more information about this line in our next lesson. So thanks everybody for watching. Just follow my next and the second lecture about Milner-Barry gambit line in French defense. If you have any question, you can contact me on chesslessons.wordpress.com or by email. So thanks for watching and see you next time.